In this episode of Aqua Chat, I'm going to get inside the head of Cam the Fish Guy. Cam co-owns an aquarium store called Gallery Aquatica, which is predominantly a reef aquarium up in Brisbane. It's a long video, so buckle up, grab yourself a drink or a cup of tea, and I'll see you on the other side. Hey guys, it's Adam here, the Australian aquarist. I've come up from Coffs Harbour in good old New South Wales to visit Brisbane and check out some local fish stores, which I must admit I crave to do because there's not much of a scene in Coffs Harbour. I spent the day down at Gallery Aquatica in Salisbury and spoken to some nice retail staff down there. Shout out to Matt and Tom. I'm up here at the Wynnum store with Cam. Cam the Fish Guy. You probably hate hearing that, do you?
No, it's easier. You know, Cam the Fish Guy. It's who I am. Yeah, it's good. I like it.
And Cam's actually been very kind to sit down and have a bit of a chat, and it didn't take too much to actually convince him to do so.
You had me a beer,
yeah,
as I said.
And he's had quite a busy week because they were not only the usual work that was going on, but I spoke to you on Thursday or Friday. You were busy collecting bits and pieces and going backwards and forwards for a market day you had on Saturday.
Correct. Yep. That was a big day.
How did that go?
Excellent. It was an amazing turnout. I think everyone had a great time. Free sausages and lots of bargains. So it was good. Yeah, we had a huge turnout.
No one came for just the sausages and the drink, did they?
Oh well, no, they came for just the event, a bit of a chat, and it was good. And we had some new fish as well. So we had a nice big order that came in and some really nice fish. So there's something for everyone.
When I saw Anya, I'm assuming Anya put the advertisement on Facebook for the market day, I got that kind of feeling about how, without sounding bad, old school it was.
Oh yeah.
Like it was the way I'm used to aquarium stores being a more a community thing. Like so many aquarium stores would just go, I've got this stuff. I've taken it out of jobs, or I'm discontinuing this line, or whatever it might be. Whatever reason for it's there for sale, it's excess, and because it doesn't fit their model, they would just get rid of it, just chuck it out, whatever. But I like the concept of actually supporting the community that's around, and actually, when there's a use for something which you haven't got the use for now, to actually hand it on to other people at a reasonable...
And yeah, that's exactly right. And that was one of the biggest things for us, is that we've got so much, I don't want to say junk, but equipment that could be used and could be perfect for someone that just happened to need that one thing. And rather than take it to the tip, offer it to people at a price that makes it well and truly worthwhile. Quite a few people said that they found certain things that were just perfect for them, and it was good. Worked out well.
I'm guessing the most expensive thing there was probably the books out there, because getting books these days is like trying to find a needle in a haystack.
Talking about old school, seeing books at an aquarium store. There was always a book section in an aquarium store, 10, 20 years ago.
And if I went to, like I was in the ANCFA, the Australian New Guinea Fish Association, shout out to those guys, and auctions there, it wasn't the fish that would get the money. It was the books.
And Anya has an amazing collection. She's like literally dozens of books, and a lot of them are, she's got some which have been signed by the authors, and probably the best Christmas present I ever got her was, a set of books. Corals of the World, I think it was, the 3 set. I can't remember what it's called, but anyway, she loved it, and she's got a huge set of books, and she really likes them. So, but she sold a few of hers too, which is amazing.
Not the signed ones though.
Sorry?
Not the signed ones though.
Not the signed ones, no, definitely not. And not ones that she only had doubles of, ones that she had triples of. So she's back to doubles.
Not the Julian Sprung JS in the front.
Oh no, she would never sell anything like that.
But I guess the reason for doing this kind of a video is it's the sense of community that I'm trying to get. And I feel like in today's social media, and here we are on YouTube, but a social media driven world, and Instagram particularly, there's a tendency to get swallowed up in trends and collectoritis and what's flashing, what's new. And I grew up in the day of keeping fish and parrots and reptiles where you would actually go and look forward to meeting once a month. And it wasn't because of the animals, it was because you were immersed with people that had the same interests in you. And I mean, that's partly the reason why I thought that was great what you guys were doing yesterday with the community day. But that's kind of the reason why I want to sit down with someone like yourself and have a chat to the other guys around, is to try and find out more about you as an aquarist and as a fish keeper, than not necessarily about the industry. so that we can get to know you. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with a question that might try and take you back a little bit in time.
Yeah.
So the question, I'm going to give you a choice of 3.
Yep.
A pearl, a Matoro, or a black diamond?
A Toro, because they were my first.
So for these guys, I don't know, we might have a variety of, I don't necessarily make videos for just reef people, I've got broad interest, but what are we talking about here?
Freshwater stingrays.
We are talking about freshwater stingrays.
And and I'm wondering if you've done any research about this, because I particularly liked the first freshwater stingrays I ever owned, and they were a pair of Matoros. And this was at a time, I bought them at a time when freshwater stingrays were not very common things to see in aquarium stores. And at a time when I didn't have a lot of money, and they were $1,000 each, and I remember that very clearly. And I traded, I can't remember how many, but it was over 200 electric yellows, plus threw in some cash to get these. We're going to undig this thing, but first thing I'm going to do is just turn your microphone around. Yep. Because I've got a feeling that you've got it up the front. There we go. Okay. Right. So I was working at Pet City, which is... So hang on, take us back. How old were you? Well, I was working at Pet City, so I would have
just
probably
left high school, or you out of uni?
I would have been in uni probably, yeah. Oh, no, actually probably maybe late 20s sort of thing.
Okay.
So how long ago would it have been? I'd say 20 years. 15, 20 years. So, I don't even know. I haven't worked it out. But it was when they were very hard to get. This was the first pair I'd ever seen. And they were a pair, and I bought them, and I put them in an aquaculture pond, so like a 1,500 litre round pond, and I used to buy freshwater prawns, macrobrachium, and I used to feed them.
You could buy those then? Really?
Yeah. We used to sell, at Pet City, we used to sell a lot of macrobrachium, good size.
Long arm shrimp.
Yeah, and actually they were big enough that you could use them for fishing, and I used to take them fishing and catch bass down at Hin's Dam. It's great. Yeah. But anyway, I'd probably buy 20 a week for my freshwater stingrays. Yeah. And
so you're working at an aquarium store. You're not exactly rolling in money.
Yeah. Well, at the time I certainly didn't have a lot of money. I remember that, because $1,000 at the time was.
And that's $1,000 per fish.
Yeah, 2,000 a pair.
So that's a lot of electric yellows to.
There's a lot of electric yellows. I wish I knew how many I traded in. It was that plus some money too.
So what was it about those rays that made you go, I need to work with those fish?
Well, I've never been someone that just looks at colour in fish. Like a lot of people we get the customers come in, they just want colour. But I've always been interested in fish which are just interesting and have got interesting breeding behaviours and things like that. And the idea of freshwater stingrays, and for a long time I didn't even know freshwater stingrays were a thing. We had saltwater stingrays in the marine section, but no freshwater stingrays, and they were just an interesting creature that I was amazed was available, and so I bought the first pair that I saw, and I used to love hand feeding them, and of course the intention was to breed them, being a pair, and I never bred them. And
you didn't breed them?
No, never.
And so Matoros they're one of the biggest freshwater rays that are in the hobby, aren't they? The females are getting up to 2 foot, 2.5 foot.
Smith's Aquarium had a huge one. I can't remember, probably 2 foot across, something like that.
Yeah. So it's just like to go into that, and certainly the people that I've come across that have been into freshwater stingrays, they've been serious about it. Oh
yeah. Well, I mean, and I think a lot of people buy them and chuck them in their 6x2, and they think that's going to be fine, but they do get big and they need space. And but I had these aquaculture ponds which I used to use for just breeding shrimp, macrobrachium, and stuff like that, but crayfish. But and so I had them, and they've got lots of surface area, perfect for the stingray. Also, you're looking down on them, and that's the thing about stingrays. Looking down on them was cool, but I could get right up close to them, and so I had a pair, and the male was very friendly, and I could hand feed him, and the female was a lot more standoffish, so she sort of, she'd just eat her prawns and that was it. But and I used to have a earthworm farm for them and chuck in the live earthworms.
But you didn't get them to breed?
They never bred. And I don't know what
Did you get more fish, or just that was just that pair you had?
Oh, I've had stingrays since, and I've never bred them. But I've never really had the urge to these days. Like,
Okay.
I haven't had any expensive ones.
Right.
I had medium price ones. I can't remember what they were. But no, since then the focus it's been more on marines. You know, like just everything's sort of about marine these days.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And at some point I'll do some of my freshwater projects that I've always wanted to do, but at the moment I've just got to focus on the marines, and corals is the thing.
If you're enjoying this video and this style of content, do me a favor, like the video, share the video, and subscribe to the channel. That'll help me out a lot, and that'll help me get back out on the road and get inside the heads of our fellow aquarists, which is something I really enjoy doing. And I'm hoping that you'll enjoy hearing their stories as well. If you want to also help me out and help yourself out by buying some fish food, jump on to frenzyfishfeeds.com.au. They're another sponsor of the channel. Don't forget to use the discount code Aussie Aquarist at checkout, and you'll get 10% off your order. 10% off an order, which is already going to be an excellent price, let's face it. Anyway, yeah, back to the video. Enjoy. Well, I must admit, that's why I was a little bit surprised when I did find out about these freshwater rays, because I also found out that your favourite fish was not a freshwater ray, although you're a little bit confused these days because you've got a couple of favourite fishes. One of them is an Emperata angelfish, and the other is Genicanthus angelfish.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And then we've got freshwater rays thrown in the mix.
See, I'd also say Frontosa are one of my favourite fish, and Discus.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, that's the thing. How can you decide? It's a question you always get asked, and for convenience sake and the fact that the display tank here at the Wynnum store has got the Emperor Angel as the focus, that's probably the easy answer for me. Certainly it's up there, but there's so many great fish. Another one which I really loved is a type of Tanganyikan sand sifter, which I love saying the name of, Enantiopus melanogenus.
Never heard of it.
So it's just a sand sifter, but I was talking to you before about loving fish that they've got interesting courtship behaviour and spawning behaviour and mellows, as we call them. I was a little bit famous for back in the day at Pet City because, you know, I was the only one breeding them for a while. And they were like $100 a fish sort of thing. They look exactly like a whiting. They're a whiting with holographic blue through the dorsal fin and yellow under the throat. And when they're breeding, they do this little spin around. The females follow the males. They deposit the eggs. She picks them up, and you know the colours they put out. There's nothing else like them.
Are they in the hobby now?
I saw them at Smith's Aquarium recently. Yeah, they're around.
Okay.
Yeah. But that was the thing, is that at that point in time, there were a lot of rare Tanganyikans coming through, and we didn't know if they were always going to be available. And you know, if they weren't being bred, it was sort of like, well, are we going to always have these? And so, you know, people were paying crazy dollars, and there are another fish. I'll go back to those at some point, but there's so many fish that I want to keep. You know,
I remember being at Pet C's down Mount Gravatt, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so I used
and they've been around for a long time. They're one of the, you know, sort of...
And your wife used to work at Aquarium Warehouse.
Yeah.
I got a feeling that Anya might have served me a long time ago, and I'm pretty sure, because I asked a female shop assistant, and I'm 47, so I would have been in that area at that time. I asked a female shop assistant who was shorter than me.
She's shorter than everyone.
About keeping marine fish.
Yep.
And this is how naive people can be back in the day, including myself. I asked, how many times do you need to feed it per day, marine fish on average? And the response was, at least once a day. And my response was, oh, I can't do that.
What?
Yeah.
Seriously?
So, because...
Once a day?
Yeah. And now I'm feeding about 7 or 8 times a day. I think at the time I was coming out of a part of my life where I'd had family and I was into reptiles.
Oh, yeah.
So I used to keep...
yeah, snake keeper.
No.
Feed it once a month.
No, well, no, I was into goannas, varanids.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So my interest was to... and this, again, goes back to those society meetings in the museum in Sydney where I used to immerse myself. My interest was in the monitors, that's goannas, varanids, the big guys. So my aim was to try and keep each of the large species in Australia, and I got there with the exception of the rusty monitor, which was the mangrove monitor. Sorry, not rusty, the mangrove monitor, indicus, and the parenti.
Yeah.
Because no one was keeping perennies back then.
I think people are now.
Yeah. So you can imagine, I'd come out of that, and although varanids have a very high metabolism, they're still only a good big feed maybe twice a week.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about getting back into fish, and at that time I'd only kept tropicals and axolotls and goldfish and stuff. And so I was like, oh, I can't do that.
Yeah. Well,
and Pet City, I remember when I'd gone a few stages past that, and I'd gone into Tanganyikan world.
Yep.
And I was so focused on trying to replicate a marine look. And I'd been sitting in a creek, I think at Pottsville, in shallow water. And I don't remember if I swear I thought they were black and white humbugs, but they're probably sergeant majors, picking away at my skin or whatever.
Yeah.
And I remember that look, and I wanted to come in there to Pet City and replicate it, but using freshwater fish, which is what I had at the time. And so I got into Tanganyikans, and there I was trying to look at, not frontoses, they were the little, can't remember the name of them, the smaller striped Tanganyikans.
Striped?
Yeah, vertical stripes, like
a Tropheus, like a Morii or something.
No, not Tropheus. So this is marine guys.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, like some of the shell dwellers, multifasciatus.
No,
striped
we won't go there.
Tanganyikans.
But it gave me the appearance.
Trichocephalus, maybe. Yeah, fake frontosa.
Yeah. Gave that appearance of that damsel look.
Yeah.
And what else was it? The Cyprichromis, the blue.
Oh,
yellow
yeah.
guys.
They're the closest to a marine fish, I think.
Yeah.
Because they're like a proper planktivore, so they sit high in the water, and they eat little bits of food throughout the day. Very similar to an anthias, ecologically.
I was about to say they're the anthias in Lake Tanganyika.
Yeah. No, and Cyprichromis, one of my favourite. And my mate Chris used to be the Katoomba king. So Katoomba, and I mean maybe all these names have changed.
Past.
Katoombas were amazing because they varied with their colour patterning. You know, like you could have one male that had was all yellow, and another male that had blue and yellow in certain patches, and they were very interesting in that respect. And another fish that was not being bred in big numbers, and if you were breeding them, you were making money, and especially that was definitely in my uni days when we were breeding Tanganyikan cichlids. But trophies were the other one too, and I've never really done trophies tank the way I'd like to do it because of course. I mean, get me talking about trophy. I mean, Tanganyikans, I'll go on forever. But
there's a nice Tropheus which has got. Again, I've been out of that land for a long time. Memory's gone. But the real common guy has more of a dark colour with some white or blue. Yeah. So there's another one with almost got purple tones through or something on a darker body. Much more steep forehead to it.
Purple tones.
Not like a pseudochromis purple tones. Like a dark with an infused and a much more steep forehead. Anyway, larger fish too.
Because are you sure it's a Tropheus?
Yes.
Because
I remember I told my wife I bought it for about $120 and she lost her mind.
Funny, isn't it? Yeah, and now $120 when we're selling, some of these expensive angels for hundreds of thousands of dollars. But anyway, I don't know. I'm a bit out of touch with Tropheus species, but certainly I never did a Tropheus tank the way I would really like to, which is just big. The biggest tank that I had back then was probably 500 or 600 litres, and so I'd love to. We're talking about these big tanks we've got in our garage, is the 7,000 litre SPS mothership. I'd love to do that as a Tropheus tank. And one day I'll have the space to do it, to be able to have a tank which is that sort of size. And trophies would be amazing. Have different species, but
But you had a customer come in this afternoon and ask if you had fresh water in here.
Oh, we get it every day. It's a shame. We'd love to do it both freshwater and saltwater at both shops. Salisbury's almost double the size, so we've got more space to do it. But even that, that's not big enough. We'd like to have, triple the size there. And we will at some point, but it's just so many fish, and also I'd love to do reptiles one day,
which is legal to be done in pet stores in Queensland, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's the thing is that recently they've changed the rules. You can sell in pet shops all sorts of reptiles we couldn't sell a few years ago. So I'd love to do that.
Is there a an off-license category of reptile which can be sold in Queensland. So in New South Wales, I think it was blue tongues, bearded dragons,
Yeah,
we're almost a bit like
to,
how corals and cockatoos don't have to be a license.
Yeah. I don't know exactly about the laws about it. Certainly, as an aquarium store, you have to be licensed to have them in the shop, but I think there are certainly some frogs and rules around the common things like blue tungsten, where you're allowed to keep them if they're collected on your property. But I don't know the rules, so and until we get to the point where we're going to have reptiles in the store, then we'll make sure we've got the right license. But
so it actually sounds like Gallery Aquatica is going to be becoming a bit more expansive in the future by the sounds of what you're saying right now.
We'll certainly do reptiles at some point. Both Anya and I love reptiles, and
that was going to be my linchpin talking point for Anya if she was here this afternoon, because I believe that she was actually almost going to study herpetology.
Yeah. I mean, she was really into it. She's had a lot more reptiles than I have. I've kept bearded dragons and a lot of the easy pythons, but that's about it.
So when you were back in your 20s and you were messing or working, I should say, not messing, working with your Matoros, and I imagine you're probably still breeding some cichlids, and like everyone dead who breeds Malawi cichlids, they've always got to breed bristle noses too, because the bristle noses make the money. What happened after that? Oh, are you a Brisbane boy, by the way?
Gold Coast originally.
Gold Coast.
Yeah, so I worked at the Pet Barn at Nerang, which is another classic Southeast Queensland aquarium store, pet shop.
I think I saw some scats down there one time. They would have had little tiny red
probably
scats.
Yeah.
So did you spend much time in the ocean around the Gold Coast?
Yeah,
and diving and checking and collecting and...
Yeah, I used to do a lot of snorkeling and surfing. But not collecting, just snorkeling. But after freshwater, I guess, just came saltwater, and it was a natural progression. I
don't see that as being a natural progression, especially when you come from stingrays. Because stingrays, and I was talking to Matt about, I didn't even know, this was pure coincidence, people. It shouldn't be too stingray heavy, but I was talking to Matt down there at Salisbury and found out that he currently has stingrays, and then I was thinking about you, and I was thinking, it really is a niche in itself in freshwater world.
Oh, definitely.
And to go from that, which people are really hyper-focused on, to then go into the world of marine, to me, like it's almost a 360.
Yeah.
Actually, it's a 180 because you're not going back to the start again. You come over.
So I think the difference between freshwater and saltwater is that freshwater has so many niche areas, and they are so different. If you're a stingray person, it's different to a discus person. It's different to a Tanganyikan person, which is different to a Malawian person. Killifish, fighter people, little miniature shrimp. There's so many different. But I think with marine, we kind of all do pretty similar things, which is, most of us have a mixed reef tank or an SBS or maybe a soft coral tank, but we're keeping similar sort of fish. You get the occasional predator tank, the occasional seahorse tank or cold water, but there's not as many niche areas.
But do you think? Well, I think I was talking about that with Rory. Do you think that's because let's face it, the freshwater hobby has been going on for over 100 years? The saltwater hobby is so new in comparison. It's going through its evolution.
I think that there's a lot of areas of the saltwater fish keeping which is more difficult and inaccessible to most people. And really what I'm talking about is temperate water fish. And I heard you mentioning before about...
Old wives?
Sorry?
Old wives?
No. Maybe to Rory, that would be his sort of fish.
Yeah, we're talking about old wives.
No, well, I mean, you keep those if you want, but...
they're good. They look like Ultim Angel fish.
No, they don't. No.
Actually, you know what their common name is? Not Ultim. It's actually called the double scalar historically.
Yeah, we've had them here. I'm talking about some of the freshwater cowfish and things like that. Cold water cowfish.
Marine.
Yeah, marine.
So shores.
Shores and what's the other one?
The ornate.
The shores. Well, the shores is the one I'm thinking of more than anything, but There's another one. I think it's what's the species name? Oh, regardless. Anyway, but cold water, like temperate water fish. I think that would be a really cool niche if it was more easy to do. But
you know the funny. So we're talking. So the shores and the ornate cowfish, cowfish,
Yep.
are species from Victoria down into Tasmania and
up to West Australia even.
Up to Western
West
Australia,
Australia,
right? They're cold water species.
Yeah.
And they.
And let's actually throw in things like.
They're a pufferfish, by the way, in the pufferfish family.
Yeah. And the name weedy sea dragons, things like that.
Yeah.
So
kelp.
Yeah. So weedy sea dragons have been available in the hobby in recent years, and they are probably the most incredible looking fish you'll ever see.
Yep.
But the problem is they're a cold water fish, and they need space, and they need specific
Live food.
feeding. Yeah. And so, they're a difficult thing to keep, but they're within the reach of a lot of, hobbyists that are okay on spending the money to get the right sort of setup and know what is required.
Actually, as you know, I'm in cut flowers and cut foliages, and I go to my potting mix supply. My potting mix supply down in Nambucca used to work at the Melbourne Aquarium, and he used to actually, part of his job was going to do plankton tows in the, is it the bay?
Yep.
To get live mysis
Yeah.
to feed the sea dragons.
Yeah.
That was part of his gig.
Yeah.
But the thing that, when you bring up sea dragons and also the cowfish, for example, is that I'm aware of those species being available to hobbyists in America.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's
And
interesting. There's probably areas of the world that they're probably not endemic to Australia.
no,
the sea dragon definitely is, but
the cowfish
as well. Yeah.
But it was at Steve Wiest. Steve Wiest is an American reefer, and I spent a lot of time working by myself, so listen to a lot of podcasts. Oregon Reef, I think, was his website, and he had a massive reef tank, but he had a cold water tank. He used to go like Puget Sound kind of collecting. And I could be wrong, but I'm sure that there was a cowfish in that mix.
Oh, look, I wouldn't be surprised because I think they're being collected and they're probably just not being supplied to the domestic market.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we have had shores and I had them at the house. I had them for years, actually, and I loved them. And this is what I mean. But it was easy for me there. They were relatively small and, they do get large is the problem. But the hardest part was the fact that to keep them cool, you've got to have a chiller, which is oversized.
Yep.
The other problem in this environment is the condensation. Yeah. So
I think a lot of people will go for a acrylic tank as well because you get the extra thickness, which means the temperature difference is less across the plane of the.
Yeah, I've never tried that in an environment like Southeast Queensland.
Yeah.
But we did have a double glazed tank that we use as a seahorse tank.
Right.
And we had Southern Night seahorses, which are another great fish, but they're being cold water. They're more difficult to keep in Brisbane.
Yeah.
But this double glazed tank was great. It completely stopped the condensation problem. But the idea of having like a big tank, so something that holds a couple of thousand litres or more, double glaze, and you're really talking about expensive plus the price to chill it down.
Yeah.
But that if you can overcome those problems, something like a tank which is devoted to Shaw's cowfish or weedy sea drake or even the Southern Night seahorses, it'd be awesome. And I think that's the sort of area I'd like to go into in the future. But there's just so many other things I want to do.
Or even old wives.
No, come on.
They're a good looking fish.
That's a Rory fish. Oh yeah, I mean
the double scalar.
Okay.
The only problem I've got with them, and I must admit I failed with the tank I set up for them.
Yeah.
I had this image. I had a 600 litre. It was almost a 5 by 3 by 2 foot tank.
Yep.
And I did I got some rock work from Sawtell Island where it's very sort of eroded and pitted and it looks fantastic. And there was a caulerpa, which is Caulerpa filiformis, and I got caulerpa on my licence to collect under my aquarium collection permit. Caulerpa filiformis is the real strap leaf one, which looks almost like Vallisneria, and It's a subtropical caulerpa that's found off South Africa. It's off, I think, Peru, but for some reason it's found in this Eastern Australian belt, and it's considered it might actually be a weed potentially.
Yeah.
It's found around Ballina, but then not in the mid-north coast around Coffs Harbour at all, and then comes up again around Newcastle down to Cronulla. So anyway, I went up to Ballina and I collected some Caulerpa filiformis and set it up in the tank, did the whole semi-marine come aquascaping freshwater look kind of thing going on. And it was amazing, but you know what the Caulerpa likes to do? It likes to spoof out all its spores.
Oh, yeah.
And go white.
Yeah.
And not only, it was going through processes of doing that where the tank would go to milk and I'd just do a water change and chuck some carbon in and come back the next day and pull out the stuff that was gone crap and let, it was growing. I was fertilising it with Liverpool Creek Aquarium fertilisers. I chose the...
fertilising Caulerpa.
Yeah,
Wow.
metal halide over the top. The Liverpool Creek Aquarium has got the green label premium, which the iron is in the EDDHA form, which is stable at alkaline pHs.
Okay.
Whereas EDTA form is 7 below, so you can't use that. Anyway, the point of all this is at the same time as this Caulerpa spoofing out the spores, the old wives, they're mongrels of fishes. They will eat live food, live shrimp, live whitebait. One fish started to eat shaved seafood, then it started to eat pellets, and it still is to this day.
Oh, you still got it?
2 small fishes
You're committed.
would eat the shaved seafood and live food, but the remaining 7 would only take live food.
How many did you buy?
Collected.
I collected
9.
Wow. Wow.
So, and I've got them all still to this day.
Wow.
But the tank itself is a display which was to be Caulerpa, and I had the wave maker set up. We had this jive where it would go vroom, and then vroom, and then vroom, you know, and the fish would have to go this side, and then this side, and it worked for as long as the Caulerpa would stay in there, and then by the 3rd time of it just going, I just sort of went, no, I can't do this. I chucked some sargassum in there in the middle section where the Caulerpa was, and actually the old wives preferred it more because they were sort of amongst it, but it just wasn't the same effect. And I don't know if you've done an aquarium where it's just not what you set out to do, and you just don't have the same feeling about it anymore.
Heaps, yeah.
Sometimes
Sometimes I don't work.
you just kind of feel deflated.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So have you got any? There's no cold water keepers around Brizzy.
Marine, not that I know of. No. I mean, that's just an example of something that I'd like to do, and I think it's an area that we could do in the future. But it's difficult. It's difficult. I guess the comparison between freshwater and saltwater is that, the different niches are more difficult with saltwater.
I don't know if they're more difficult. It's just we haven't tried yet, and you haven't failed until you've having a go. You know what I mean? So like,
and that's the thing. I will definitely give it a go at some point. And weedy sea dragons will be the thing that I'll do.
Yeah.
And at some point, if you can imagine walking into an aquarium store that has weedy sea dragons, in like a 2,000 litre tank in the middle of the shop, it'd be amazing.
I was under the impression, and I was told by a YouTube follower of mine, that there is a fellow in Victoria who has a permit. I think his name's Payne.
Well,
to actually
I don't know the
collect
name, but
number
that's
of
right.
sea dragons.
Yes. My understanding, and I don't know for sure, but it was to collect ones that were going to be have either babies ready to go, or I can't remember exactly how they breed.
So they're brooding.
So in the pouch, and so basically collecting ones that have babies in the pouch.
Yeah.
I think something like that.
It's to then drop the babies in a tank, and then release the male.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. So something like that, but they were certainly available a couple of years ago.
Okay. Because I actually did do a bit of a search on the internet trying to find that individual. I didn't come up with any luck, I must admit.
Yeah. Well, it was definitely a thing, and they were legal, and they were available. Yeah. And hopefully they are again, because that would be probably the most spectacular tank you could ever walk into an aquarium store and see. Yeah. In my opinion, fish orientated aquarium.
I think would be the harder thing to do from a hobbyist level in that kind of display would be to actually successfully grow the kelp.
Yeah.
And I've tried
Yeah.
a number of times to grow the kelp. And
Yeah.
I think it comes down to water motion and fertiliser.
I think that is the case, and having I don't know what the name of them is, the surge box that drops the water in and causes the surge of the water. The type of water flow, I think. And I think seagrass is difficult as well too. I've never tried it, but you tried it? Successful?
What tends to happen is
Not enough light.
No, well, you tend to get algae growing on the actual leaf blades, and what happens then is it loses some of the aesthetic appeal that you get. And obviously, if you're snorkeling, algae's on the seagrass, but because you've got a field of it in front of you, you don't recognise that. But when you shrink it down to a display, it might be a 4-foot tank or something, your eye fixes on that.
Yeah.
And you can't put a rabbit fish or I mean, besides the fact that seagrass beds don't tend to have, well, they might have rabbit fish, but they wouldn't have surgeonfish generally. You can't put urchins in there. So what do you put in there to try and combat the actual algae? It becomes aesthetically difficult. But this is where I'm excited about the hobby going, because I come from freshwater roots. I come from reptiles, and then obviously I got into salt when I was in North Queensland shopping at Cairns Marine when they were open to the public, which was absolutely brilliant. And I've always been very fish focused, but when I look, and display focused, I want to replicate what I see.
So I've got
when
a
I'm
question
diving.
for you.
Yeah.
Have you done mangrove? As someone who has a plant background and enjoys aquariums, a mangrove tank would be something you could do really cool. And has got a section of his shed cut out so you can get the light to your aquarium.
Yeah, the biggest problem with growing mangroves is light, because they're a full sun plant.
Yeah, and this is what I've heard, and I'm very keen to do it, and I will do it at some point.
And I think I told you that I did cut out the roof of my shed, two panels to put in polycarbonate, and you cannot tell that my Kessel 500X is on when the sun's coming through.
And I was going to do this on the SBS Mothership, just have, I'm not a plant person, but I figured like a little prime freshwater over it would be enough.
I don't think it would be.
And I was talking to Anya the other night, telling her this plan, and she's like, no way, you need it full light.
And not only that, I feel like...
Outside refugium, I think that's what I'll do.
Outside aquarium.
Yeah, well, I've never done that. But the idea of having, the system, because the system that we've got at the house, the SBS Mothership, it would be very easy to tap it outside, run through a thing and put mangroves out there.
Yeah.
We live right next door to a lot of mangroves.
Well, you've got access. Yeah, the reason I looked at the camera there was because in certain parts of Australia, you're not supposed to collect.
Oh no, I'm not going to collect them. We can
Although
buy
I think
legally.
You can collect. Can you?
Yeah. I would never collect them. Don't worry. I'd buy them legally. You can buy them. So Monsoon do them.
Do they?
Yeah.
So they do the red mangrove.
I don't know the species. It's one of the species that you can do. I don't think there's a lot that you can't. I don't know the species. I should have,
Well, the species
I would do some research.
I think the species that are most hobby aesthetic is the red mangrove, or which is Rhizophora. I think is Rhizophora.
It has an elongate seed, as opposed to the little round things.
Yeah. So that seed floats around, and then when it gets to a certain stage of maturity, the end gets somehow denser, and it tends to sink down to a vertical position. Then it sets roots and grows out the top.
Yep.
And it's got those fantastic prop roots. Yeah. But that mangrove, I didn't grow up with that mangrove, because it's around here, which I saw actually yesterday. I went, ooh, look at those.
That's what I mean. We live very close to mangroves. Yeah. So I assume that the sun is right here, or it's just a case of getting the tank out to the sun. As opposed to trying to put my little prime over it.
I listen to a lot of and communicate on off with a fellow called Scott Philman, who was in Reef World. I think he was a part owner of Unique Corals, and then got into doing botanical method aquariums, and has a podcast called The Tick. And because I love it, I was adding botanicals and stuff into my giant turtle tank, and I was listening more and more, and his also interest is in mangroves. And my thought process kept on going that the ideal mangrove tank is not to throw in sucophytans and xenia and a clam and this sort of stuff, because I mean, it might occur over in maybe parts of the Indo-Pacific, I don't know, but certainly in Australia it doesn't. My idea of a mangrove tank would be to actually have quite a shallow tank, quite a wide, quite a broad. And I was thinking about doing this with my 7x4 tank that I have to strip down. Having it set up so you've got a high and a low overflow. That you can, one's got a hole in it so it drains naturally after the pump's turned off. So you get a 6-hour high and low. You've got a mud flat going up. You might be able to put in things like, there's a mangrove fern called Acrosticium, which is usually Acrostichium. It's like a fern that grows about 1 metre high, and it grows behind the mangrove zone, but still in the mud. And then have things like fiddler crabs.
Oh yeah.
If you want to go real fast,
mud skippers. You got to keep them in the tank though.
If you want to go full North Tropper, you could go with things like there's a blue eye, a neon back blue eye.
Oh yeah.
That, you know, similar small fish, but in big numbers, flashing its fins, and it's nice striped neon black, and it lives in salt water. Yeah. I think Dave Aquagreen up in Darwin supplies that fish. So that, I keep on coming back in my mind that the marine hobby, especially where it's so young. And
there's so many things we don't do, and that was really my point with the cold water. You know, like so many. With freshwater, there's so many little niche areas that people really specialise in, but with saltwater, we have this tendency just to have, you know, a mixed reef tank, you know, and the same fish in every tank. Which is great. It still creates a nice ecosystem, but there's so many things you can do with marine that we don't do, and we could do. And
do you think the customers aren't necessarily getting into nature enough to get inspired?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. No, it's not that they're not getting into nature to be inspired. I think that it's just not done enough for people to see tanks that do that then get the inspiration to recreate that. And I think that's I think that's where a lot of aquarists get their inspiration, is walking into an aquarium store and seeing an amazing display tank and saying, I want to recreate that. And if not in an aquarium store, walking into a friend's house and seeing an amazing aquarium, or an amazing aquarium in a shopping centre or a doctor's surgery or whatever. Having people that are the first to create that type of ecosystem and tank, and put it out there for others to then emulate and recreate and modify slightly. I think that's the thing. And a lot of people talk about the importance of aquarium stores, local fish stores, so that we can inspire people to try new things. Having a nice display tank is such an important aspect of that. So in both our stores, we've ensured that we've tried to have nice display tanks that people walk in and say, I want that in my house. That's the idea.
So after going back a step, you've got your Motoro arrays, they're not quite working for you.
I didn't care they didn't breed. Like, I loved them regardless. But I mean, it would have been nice to breed them because of the amount of money that they were fetching those days. But I didn't care.
And you were, I'm assuming, starting to jump into the world of doing aquarium maintenance back then?
Yeah, and the salt water is the more lucrative, and and I think actually not just that, the idea that people needed more help with the salt water, and so having actually the tank up here, this live rock tank, so it's 8 foot by 2.5 by 2 or something. That was my first
with no live rock in it.
With no, it's called the live rock tank because it was put there for live rock, but we haven't had live rock in it for 10 years. But it was that was one of my first marine display tanks.
Right.
So in fact, it was my first big marine display tank, and
in the store?
No, at my house.
Right.
Yeah. And so it, I had all sorts of things, like lots of Dallas acro, which is like a famous coral for us.
Become expensive again.
We've run out of it. Although I've got a few customers that are they're growing really quick. Anyway, but lots of things that it's very handy to have in that tank that I could frag for people and bring it to their house. So having a focus on the salt water in my own personal hobby made a big difference for the business which I was trying to create, which was always to be a maintenance business, helping people with their aquariums, and the shop sort of came later. The idea of having the shops was really to sort of feed the maintenance business.
So you actually weren't doing the initial maintenance on behalf of the aquarium store that you were working for. You left and go on your
Never
own.
officially, no. I mean, there was certainly customers that I had that would go into the store, and I'd sell them things through the shop, just as a normal salesperson selling, stuff to the customers. And I think it was good for the store because it was I was bringing customers in, and I never advertised through the store, but certainly, I had a maintenance business looking after people's tanks, and the natural progression was to have a store so that we could then have our own stock that we were then selling to our clientele.
So we're talking about, what, 2010?
Well, the store opened in 2013, I think. And so, around about that time was when I was sort of, a little bit earlier maybe, kicking off with the Marines.
So I was having
2008,
visions of a fellow or a YouTube channel called LA Fish Guy back then. Have you ever seen that video channel?
No.
But I realised it's actually a bit before that time though.
No, I haven't.
Yeah.
Interestingly, I don't get a lot of time to watch a lot of YouTube.
I can imagine.
Yeah. And sometimes I worry that maybe our YouTube, we're doing things that have already been done. But
I spent a lot of time, I have spent a lot of time over the years trying to think of cut flower product or leaves or flowers to supply the market, because my focus, what I grow, is for corporate commercial jobs, and they always ask for something different. And so for years I would spend time experimenting and trying different things, and I only ever found a different product once, and it lasted about a year before I didn't want it anymore. Someone's always done it, and the market always moves on. It's frustrating. It's very frustrating. So when you've got yourself into the world of aquarium maintenance and installation, I want to know, because this is what really interests me a little bit, do you get the opportunity to just go, I really want to try this. This would be fantastic. I'm going to try this display. I'm going to chuck this school of giant blue-green chromis up with a coral trout below it. I'm going to try putting annularis angelfish in with my SPS heavy tank. I'm going to have a great big school of copper band butterflies, or I'm going to have a school of raccoons cruising ways. Do you get to try these things, or you find that you get pulled back into line all the time?
So, I mean, it's some of each, and I tell you what, the tanks that work the best are the tanks where I get creative license. That
would take a special customer.
Well, there's a few. There's quite a lot out there that they will say to me that they just want me to do the tank how I envisage it, and they're always the best ones. The tanks where we've got a lot of restrictions put on us in terms of, the tank build itself, the dimensions and the space for the equipment and all these sort of restrictions are the ones that are always the hardest to really pull off. And even as far as the aquascape and the fish and the corals that go in there, the ones where we're really sort of restricted as to what we have to put in there, and the customers are really sort of strict about what they want, they're the hardest ones to make work.
Is that because you've got the pressure to actually, because they've got a preconceived idea?
No, it's because people that don't have experience with fish don't know what's going to work. And they, a lot of people want everything in their tank. They want a full, mixed reef tank with, heaps of fish, and they, and everything. And they don't understand that it's a complex ecosystem where, certain fish are going to eat certain corals, and certain inverts don't work with other inverts, and just there's certain things when people come in, and so expectation management is a big thing for us. And even when it comes down to the speed of the installation, we're always ensuring that people have an understanding that these things don't come together overnight. There's a process that you have to follow, and there's things we can do to speed that process up, but it's still it's a process, and just expectation management is a big thing. But when people are happy to go at the speed that we are comfortable with, and they're happy for us to be not make all the decisions, but certainly, be guided by what we say, that makes it easier for us to have success with the tanks. And you can see it, the different tanks, and it's often the amount of, input from the clients that can make or break, and how, strong they are with what they want specifically.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of getting out of uni. I changed careers and went into horticulture and garden design, and I'd walk my clients through nurseries talking about plants. Like, I've got visions of you walking through aquarium stores or through, well, not aquarium stores, but other aquariums, or even the store here showing off different corals and trying to educate them as you go along. Have you actually put a tank in where you actually, after it was done, had to retrospectively sell the concept to the client? Because it was like, oh wow, I had license to do this, but when it came about, the client was like, oh, that's not, or that's interesting. And you've had, and then you've educated them about what your idea is. So we're talking about art here, aren't we? Really?
Not really, and I'll tell you the reason why. And it goes back to what I was saying about how most people want the same thing with marine tanks. They want to have corals and fish, and they want to have a pair of clownfish and a blue tang, and they like certain things. And so it's pretty easy to be able to predict what people want. And they might say something crazy, like they want a lionfish in their reef tank, and you have to explain to them why it doesn't work.
Well, that could work if it wasn't any
could
small
work.
fish in there.
It could work, and I mean that's another example of a tank that I think I'd love to do one day. Is just like a tank that's got lots of lionfish in it and not much else. But when they want everything, it's not going to work if they've got clownfish.
Yeah.
They're going to end up with just the lionfish.
Yeah.
So obviously, you have to guide people, but because it's because people typically want just a thriving reef with lots of fish, it's relatively easy to guide their expectations towards that.
So if someone, okay, here's an idea. You've got a client comes in on Thursday through the door, and you've had a few days off to recuperate after market day, and you've thought, they come in and they say, I want to put a fish tank in, an aquarium, a marine aquarium, a reef aquarium into my house, but I don't know what I want. I want you to just do it for me.
Yeah.
You have absolute license to do whatever you want to do.
They're the best ones, so it'll always work.
Free reign.
Yeah.
What would you choose now?
What would I choose?
To do. And I'm going to say this different. I'm going to say marine. Not reef. I'm going to say marine aquarium.
Oh, look, I'd still go a reef tank. Because people are going to be happy when they've got a full ecosystem with corals. They regardless of how much creative license they give you, they're still going to want to see colour and an ecosystem and rock structure that is interesting. That you might have to get up close to have a look at different areas. It's easy to predict what people are going to be happy with.
Okay.
But the reason why
what's going to make you happy when you come back to that job?
I'll tell you what's going to make me happy is a system that works well. So a filtration system that's easy to maintain, that is large enough with good access to the equipment that you can easily clean the protein skimmer, that you can easily program the dosing pump, and just things that work well. Yeah. That for me is the most exciting sort of tank to be able to, because so often we're given the challenge of trying to make all the equipment for a reef tank fit underneath the tank. Your chiller, your automatic top-up system, your sump with a skimmer, a filter roller. To have the ability to make a tank or a system which has got unlimited space for your filtration equipment. I love tanks that are set up with filter rooms, so you can have the tank over here, it feeds down into a sump over here. We've got 6 foot of height that you can work and clean and maintain.
And
that makes all the difference. You're standing up, that you can access the tank easily, front and back. You've got, just those sorts of things are exciting, because I know I'm going to be able to make that work. I know I'm not going to have issues with anything in the future. It's like you're future-proofing a system. And it'll be a good system for 20, 30 years, because you know, the tank is engineered well, it's the right size, that they haven't gone too crazy tall in thin glass because they want to save some money.
Yeah.
All those sorts of things are exciting because when you're making a reef tank, as an example, but specifically reef tanks are good because the idea is that you're creating an ecosystem from scratch. It's going to be there for a long time, and it's going to be better at year 5 than it was at year 2, and better at year 10. You might have to prune some things back and cut some Dallas out because it's hit the water level. But
I do know you guys have you do keep your rock quite high.
Well, I do, but some of the other guys think I'm crazy.
Also and I think also in the tank down at Salisbury, your rock work did go quite high as well.
And some of the other guys don't really like that, and I understand it. But I like to have a full tank. I like to see structures, and it doesn't have to be the rock. Like just having, if you've got the rock work 50% of the height of the tank, and then the corals going the rest of the way. And you're going to have corals hit the surface of the water if you do that, but I'd prefer to prune it back and still have that full tank. Having fish that are swimming high in the tank is important for me too. Especially if it's a tall tank, Which this is not.
You want your fish to be high in the tank, but you put the rock all the way up the top.
Yeah, but I mean, so I saw today, just now, my lawnmower blenny, a fish which is generally associated with the bottom of the tank, was literally at the surface, had his head almost out of the water because he was, munching on some algae, I guess, on the top of their structure there. I'd never seen that. I was sitting in that chair for the first time in 5 years, and I'd never seen that before. But I like that. It means that you're using the full dimensions of your tank. But really, what I was talking about more about fish swimming high in the tank is about just having a tank that is aesthetically appealing, so that you've got stuff happening up here, and it could be just the fish, Anthias and Chromis and whatever, and then your structure, down low, but filling the tank out, creating a balanced ecosystem.
So I've had good luck with Chromis. I did keep some Chromis in when I was in North Queensland and had the usual one by one.
I know where you're going with this.
They bicker and carry on, and you get up with 2 Chromis.
The
Chromis I've had here, I got as a group of 10. They got to 8, and I've had that 8 for going on 4 years now. They spawn all the time. I have had an outbreak of bryopsis. They were spawned in the bryopsis. Love it. They don't school. But I spoke to a hobbyist in Coffs Harbour who had another large tank, larger than what my Chromis are in, and he said what they would actually do, because his tank was 4 foot deep, and he had his acros that were about the halfway mark, there was a real body of water about 2 foot above the top of the established colonies, and the Chromis are up there, and he said that they actually would go zoom down, and
like they do on the reef.
He came down it because they're up there, they're actually exposed. Whereas in normal reefs or normal our aquariums, they're not so exposed because they're down amongst it, so they can be a bit more casual about it. I think Chromis get a bad rap, and when you see them on the reef, that's exactly what they do. And I think one of the things that we're really trying to do with aquariums in general is to create an environment in which fish act naturally. And I think, with Chromis, we sell them for people with nano tanks because they'll survive because they're hardy as, but they're not necessarily going to act naturally. And you won't get the aesthetic you're looking for in a small tank.
I think with most people, they'll school in a tank when they're small, and having a group of Chromis which are all the same size, because they're quite size prejudiced. They like to be in groups of the same size, and having them in the right numbers. Generally, in smaller tanks, they'll act the way people want to, but they are fish that do act naturally in bigger tanks, and when they get bigger, and in smaller tanks they often won't. And they'll do this thing that people always complain about, where they pick each other off, and this is the size of your tank, So,
and I found also feeding in water motion. They've got to stay busy. They've got to be busy.
That's right. They're a planktivore. And certainly water motion. I think with reef fish, they enjoy it. They enjoy that strong flow. So
Now I just had a thought. When you get that next job we're talking about, the one that where the person says, Cam, you can build this tank and you can do whatever you want. I was just thinking about what I would like to actually do if I saw that. I had free reign of a saltwater tank, a marine tank, and that. And for a while, I've had this vision of quite a large tank, but it's a pelagic fish tank.
Oh yeah.
So we're talking something in the realms of, say, 4 meters long, 3 meters, maybe 2 meters, up fairly high, so it gives the effect of the open ocean.
Yep.
And being up high, I'd have to choose fish species carefully, but you could bottom light the glass base. Don't know how in the world you clean coralline off a glass base.
You'd have to get in it.
Yeah. But imagine a whole, and I don't like blue light, I like white light, I like whiter than that.
Yeah.
But imagine a whole blue area effect coming up through the water column. And I've got, I see fish like fusiliers, trevallies.
I tell you the best one.
Scads, monos.
No.
I love monos. And that schooling effect in that eerie water column.
I look cool.
Would be amazing.
But you know what you want is batfish.
Yeah. But they're not an open. Are they an open water?
Open water enough. How open water do you want?
I'm talking about the ocean here.
Pelagic?
I'm talking about we're going out in the mid-sea and we're worried about blue mako sharks.
Yeah.
And it's not quite big enough for a Spanish mackerel.
Yeah, and that's the problem with so many of those fish. They do need huge amounts of space, and I think even in 4 meters is probably not going to be enough.
No.
But I've got a similar sort of
Fusiliers
thing.
work.
Fusiliers definitely.
But
Yeah,
they do
they're
need
small.
reef to go back and hide.
Yeah, I've kept Fusiliers in. Well, not that big, but yeah, they're cool fish. I used to have one of those aquaculture ponds. I had epaulet sharks and Fusiliers and things like that.
That's a random combination, isn't it? Recorded from.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, it's not about pelagic fish as such. And I'm not sure how pelagic fusiliers are. They do like associate with the substrate. But the reason, going back to batfish, that's the fish I've always wanted to keep, and they're the fish that I've never done properly. And I'm toying with the idea of throwing you in the SBS mothership.
It's been a long time since I've seen a batfish in an aquarium.
So it's funny because they're...
As in the LFS, I mean.
Yeah. I think the ones that you do occasionally see are the ones I'm not really that keen on. The orbicular, I think it is.
The orbicular, it is the one down the East Coast, yeah.
The one that I will keep one day is the Tiara. Latex Tiara. Yeah. So when they're juveniles, they've got the long dorsal and ventral fins, and they just look beautiful. And they're actually found locally. Yeah. And,
are they? Tiaras are they?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Raby Bay. So Brisbane,
Yeah, right.
So, and I've seen a number of people who have caught them out of the bay themselves, put them in their tank, and then they've outgrown the tank, because they seem hardy as. Yeah. And when they get bigger, they lose their fins and they become more, like a disc mono. Shape. Yeah.
A discus shape?
Like a discus shape, yeah. Certainly more rounded, but... you hear a lot of divers talk about them as a friendly fish that they interact with, and I've always wanted to have a school of them in a tank. Yeah. But they get so big that you've got to have a huge tank. Yeah. And whilst they're probably not technically a pelagic, the idea of having them in a tank like that, I think would be cool. Yeah. Just interactive, but it's another fish that I'll keep one day.
I think that kind of giant. Actually, for the Fusiliers, what we could do is actually have that size tank, but we actually build a low reef front that comes up from the base, not over the whole bottom, because it's the edge of the reef. So the reef's coming up.
So how do you light?
And there's the blue coming up
from.
You're
gonna have a glass bottom.
Glass bottom, and you'd have to have some sort of LED strip light or something underneath to get that shine. And then, because you've got that reef coming up, you could put schooling Squamopinus anthias. You could put my favourite, which is a scissor tail sergeant major. What's the common name for that?
Sergeant major.
Yeah. Love that fish. But
really?
This is the scissor tail one.
Okay.
Which is really common in all the books when you see schooling with Squamopinus anthias. Yeah. And then the Fusiliers in as well.
Aggressive.
No, they're not.
You sure?
I'm positive.
Okay.
I'm positive. Yep, positive. Well, in my experience.
Yeah, well,
everyone's experiences are different.
I could have the wrong fish. I mean, when you say sergeant major, I just think aggressive. But
I do keep the standard sergeant major as well.
How are they?
Actually, the female bashed up the male just before I let them come to Brisbane. but I think it's because they're gone into courting mode. It's springtime, and I've got a pair of humbugs which are model citizens. They're gone to spawning mode. The chromas are spawning, and I've got a flavipinus damsel, so the yellowfin damsel, that is clearly now a male because it's trying to convince the female blue devils to come into the Carson Surge device outlet to come and spawn in there. So springtime's arrived, but yes, the male did get bashed up by the female in the Sergeant Majors. I don't want to take too much of your time, but I do have one serious question.
Yep.
And to me, it's about education, and it's to do with coral. Yep. And this might be more of an Anya thing, I'm not sure. But the one thing that occurs to me when I listen to a lot of information, and also when I go to LFSs, is I don't tend to see a lot of species taxonomic labelling on corals. So certain corals you certainly do. Certain LPS you do. It's become very familiar, like a Fimbrophilia or Euphilia, or, you know, certainly do. A Sarcophyton or a Simularia. It probably jumps more into the realms of the SBS. And it's got to the point to me, and I'm not a massive coral guy. To me, coral's there as a backdrop to provide that aesthetic when I'm, for my fish, that I see when I'm snorkeling.
Yep.
So, excuse me for not being completely up there with certain species.
And I'm not taxonomically minded.
But for example, I was listening to some podcasts, and the red dragon, and I'm thinking, what's the red dragon? Jumped on, Acropora cardulus. But I also found a mention of the red dragon that wasn't an Acropora cardulus. It's a completely different species. And so I can't help but feel the more we just keep on saying it's a red dragon, it's a Dallas. What's a Dallas? Is it a Youngie? Is it a Hoaxen?
Well, that's a big question itself, and I'd probably just skip over that one because where there's a lot of ask Anya that one. We don't really know.
Right.
We don't really know.
And I guess part of me goes, okay, well, there is a lot of, from what I understand, there is a great big taxonomic review with Acropora. A lot of, like, Spatulata is now going to be Millipora. A lot of tenuous is not tenuous. There's tenuissima, and then there's other species.
So, and of course there are scientific, the scientific nomenclature, and certainly proper classification of corals and the ever evolving, genus and species names, and and the way that they're being grouped is an important aspect, and it's important that it's being done. But from a hobbyist point of view, a lot of the time that the scientific names really can make it difficult to know. People just struggle with the scientific names, and so this is why the trade names and the common names have really come in. But also, as a secondary thing, is that you can have two, like one species which will present with geographical variations or other variations, not based on where they're located, and by that I mean different colours. And so, as a trade, we need to be able to say that this is that strain, and that's really why the trade names have come up. And there's no real, I don't think there's any real way around it. There's no real way to, we're always going to need to be able to explain to the customer what they're buying. People want to know what they're buying, and it's difficult because the scientific nomenclature isn't going to really match very well with the common names and the trade names. But as a hobby, we need to do it so that we can, explain to people why one coral might be worth more than another, or just so that they know what they're going to expect. When you consider how different certain coral colours can look under different lights, when you're getting it, buying it at the store and then getting it home, you want to have some idea as to what you're buying.
Absolutely.
And when they're names which are more easily remembered, like, the Zoas are the classic example. And with the Zoas, we've got Armageddons, Darth Mauls, Orange Rainbows, Rastas, all these different names. It's just a way that the hobby, can sort of, name the corals without having the difficulty associated with proper taxonomy.
I think it's.
And there are things we don't even know what the proper taxonomy is, so we've got to call it something.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And some people fight, you know, they push against the common names, and I get that, and I probably did at some point.
You mean like trade names or taxonomy
I think
names?
sometimes, well, no, trade names.
Trade
yeah,
names.
So I think sometimes people fight the trade names because, you know, they want to know what the species is and what the genus and species, and, you know, but it's not always possible to be able to tell people, and you know, it's difficult. It's difficult to keep up to date with the taxonomy, and this is why you know, I've probably said it 3 or 4 times today, is that, you know, when it comes to taxonomy, I refer to Anya because she's more up to date with it than me, and it's a fast changing thing. I mean, but even when it comes to the common names, I refer to her as well because there's so many things. And
I guess the thing that's in my head though is that, like, for example, if someone comes in and there's a range of Monty frags that have come looking nice and presented from sustainable reefs or Monson or whatever, and they're not labelled as what the species they are. I mean, for example, I bought was it an undata? Yeah. Didn't even know that's what it was.
Yeah.
And I was bought down the coast a little while back.
Yeah.
I finally figured out what it was, which I know sounds crazy to some people. I love that coral. So as soon as I found what it was, I then went on Corals of the World, found out where it was, saw pictures of what it was like as an adult coral, and went, wow, I know how to use this coral now. I did hear Anya on a podcast talking about this, and her analogy was with apples. And it was that we have a Red Delicious apple, we have a Granny Smith apple. They're trade names that we need to be able to identify those different types of apples because we use them differently. And from horticulture land, I think about a rose. So the most kind of common rose is an iceberg rose. A lily pilly. There's 2 different types of lily pillies generally. There's acminas, there's syzygiums. Syzygiums get a psyllid on the leaf, acminas don't. But if the person just comes in to buy a baby boomer without knowing which genus it is, they're not going to know if they had that cultural issue coming in. So if I come to buy an acro that's listed that comes as a wild piece caught, but it just says acro, but I don't know if it's a microcladus or a millipora or a spatulata, and then I don't necessarily know what to do with it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good point. I mean, I guess with your psyllid analogy, there's some acros which are more prone to flatworms than others. So you could argue, you know, the same sort of thing, but I think that definitely back in the day, I remember walking to aquarium stores and they would have, you know, the genus and species on the corals, but I think now it's just it's been lost to the trade because of the number of corals that we sell, and, you know, unpacking an order of 150 and then writing them on so many shops don't even write the names, you know, or the prices on the tanks, and then just getting to having the time to actually be able to put the species, it's just
and
not
when you get an
practical
order of, let's say, wild acro from, let's say, Can Spring, does it come in identified to species, or is it just mixed acro?
Mixed acro.
Right.
Generally.
So they haven't done that process, and it gets
No, and you know the time that it does need to be done is when it's being exported, and that's when, you know, the species names are important.
It is done then.
Yeah, that's where the species names. I mean, I've never worked in an exporter, but this is my understanding, is that they've got to be able to show the species of the things that are exported. Probably differs depending on where it's being exported to.
Yeah.
Certainly to New Zealand, I'm sure. I know that they've got to have the species names right, and that's one of the barriers to exporting corals. You've got to be able to do that, and certainly having people work at the shop that have got the ability to be able to identify different Montes and different acros is helpful.
Yep.
But I don't really see a time when we'll be able to, you know, put the species of every coral. I mean, we should be able to tell everything to genus, and that's, you know, I think that's typically enough. But taxonomy of you know, corals is difficult, and we're lucky to have Anya who's good at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you're right. You don't see it written on tanks, and
I think a little part of me thinks that if there's those customers that don't really care too much about it, like if it's a Monty, for example, they just want to put it as a crusty Monty.
Monty is a good example though, because there's so many different types of Monties.
Yeah.
You know, it's one genus, but, you know, there's a lot of different species and they vary a lot.
But if you get a customer that just, I don't care about that, it's a green Monty, it's a red Monty, it's a Superman, whatever it might be, and they put it in their tank, I'm wondering if that customer that doesn't really care too much about the identification and therefore more research, is that the way they're going to be throughout their entire hobby? And I pose the question, maybe not, because in my experience, the longer you're in a hobby, the more entrenched you are, the more you learn, the more you research, and then in the end, that person has taken a long journey to get out the information at the end. Whereas if they weren't ever really interested in it, they might have dropped off out of the hobby after 1 or 2 years. And
I don't see many people getting interested in taxonomy, to be honest. I think the people want to have an idea as to how to keep a coral, without knowing the different species of a species name of a Monty. Typically we can tell them how to keep it. So I think it's there are some people that really get into taxonomy and they're interested in it, but most of the time people are interested in what they need to do to look after it and to make it grow. So, you're talking about the water chemistry that they need and the light and the flow, and just the knowledge of the staff to be able to do that, because, as a Monty example, there's certainly some Monties that prefer higher light and some that aren't going to do so well in the high light. Some which are just more tolerant of water conditions. So the experience of the person working at the aquarium store that can give the information, I think is more important than actually knowing the taxonomy. And I'm a pretty good example of that. I mean, I know pretty much everything to genus, and I know a lot of the species, but there's a lot that I don't. But there's a lot that science doesn't know. A lot of things that are
it makes it very hard.
Not classified. And then when you've got variants, it's variants that and zoas are a great example. We have trade names because they're not named by science. It's difficult.
I think it's because I came from reptile land. When I was in it, it was before permits. My son wanted a snake, so I got the permit for him because he's below the age. We went to our first reptile expo in Port Macquarie. And I've been at it for so long, and all of a sudden, it's a completely different world. It's het this, cross that, zebra that, jag that, and I'm going, what in the world has happened? And then at the same time, I was breeding rainbow fish. And freshwater rainbow fish is so specific down to the very creek that you got it from. That you say the name, then the creek. And then I'd come to marine, and I'm going, what in the world's going on here? Well, another example, I looked up, the blue lightning stag. We call it blue lightning stag, or REEF Secrets calls blue lightning stag. So I try to find out what species that is. And I come up with Aquarium striata. Well, when I Google Aquarium striata, it's a completely different coral. Completely different.
Well, every aquarium store can name their own corals, and create a name that's unique to them.
I will say it's not named by them.
Oh, no, I know. Just as an example, because, and that's the thing, is that you can anyone can just name anything, and and that's the difference. Is trade names are a little bit different in that respect to scientific names, and so certainly there's a very important place for proper taxonomy. So don't get me wrong, but for what we do in the hobby and drawing the names on the tanks, it's just not a practical thing to be able to put every coral down to genus and species. So we use trade names, and even trade names, getting a lot of those written on the tank is difficult just because of the pressures of running a retail business.
I understand that.
But the trade names do make it easier to be able to, and whilst we might not have every single zoa listed on the tank, we Anya could tell you the name of every zoa. And so having staff resources that are able to do that is adequate.
I can see the difficulty there. Call me a purist, maybe.
Oh, well, that's right. And then there's a lot of people out there that do want to know the species name, and we'll get out the corals of the world, and we'll either ask Anya or we'll get out the book and we'll work it out. Monties are the best example, and I do like I'd like to know my Monty's species names better, but
Yeah. Now, mate, I don't know about you. Oh, no, these are heavy
you're all
bodies.
good.
I'm actually empty now. So I think considering that Cam's been going all week, we've gone through the fun stuff. We ended on a serious note that I should probably let you go home to your family and your son and relax for the rest of the evening.
I've got to get up early to collect water tomorrow, so
Yeah. So thank you very
Adam.
much. I look forward to seeing that pelagic fish display in a restaurant coming near to you.
It'll be a school of batfish. No, yeah.
Yeah, thanks very much, mate.
No worries. It's been good talking to you.